Welcome to another edition of Getting to Work, the podcast of NCI Works. I'm John Spencer from Starved Rock Media. Very special guest today from the Center for Work Ethic Development. I bet you'll never guess what we're going to talk about. It's CEO Josh Davies. Hi, Josh. How are you?
I'm fantastic, John. How are you doing today?
Great to meet you. I know you're excited to be here. You want to get into the whole work ethic thing because you live and breathe it, but you got a really inspiring story about how you got to here.
Well, absolutely. And you know what? Thank you again for having me on your podcast. Thank you for having me here to hear about kind of some of the challenges that you have and to get a chance to share some of our stories, some of our successes, some of our strategies with your listeners as well. One of the things that we find out about as we go through and technology continues to evolve and business continues to evolve is that really we learn, or I would almost argue relearn, how important people are in the process. And that's how I got started in everything 15 years ago, almost 20 probably now. I started in the hotel and restaurant industry, not just on the front lines, but then as management, working our way into an executive. And one of the things I love about the hospitality industry is that it didn't matter where you went to school. It didn't matter if you had some sort of advanced degree. If you were willing to work hard, if you had the right attitude, the right spirit, you could be successful. And you heard multiple stories of people who started out as busboys or dishwashers, becoming the CEO of their companies and those kinds of things. And I love that spirit. And so as my career evolved, I had an opportunity to help launch an organization called the Center for Work Ethic Development, really focusing on how we can help everyone in every industry focus on some of those skills. And that was in 2011, early 2012. So, it's been over a decade that we've been working with organizations across the United States. We have partners in all 50 states. We're in 8 foreign countries. We just signed a new agreement with a group at consulting firm in Saudi Arabia to do some work out there. Because again, what we find is what makes people successful is pretty universal. And that, yes, technical skills are important, but what makes the difference for people are the intangibles. Some people call them soft skills. We call it work ethic.
Yeah. So start with a little definition on what is work. I grew up on a farm, so I felt like I had it beat into me, You didn't go to school until your chores were done and you got off the bus and you had chores to do. But beyond that, you hear a number of people complaining about it today. And then these soft skills things creep in. So what is work ethic?
What is work ethic? Well, I think one of the things that's most important is that work ethic is not one dimensional. It's not just one thing. We like to think of it sometimes like showing up and working hard, and that's an important part of it. But if you're uncoachable while you're there, if you're a jerk, if you get into fights, it's almost like I'd rather you not be there at times, right? So what we found from our research, and that we then worked with research from the U.S. Department of Labor to come together with what is a definition. And what we found is that it was a set of 7 skills that were these foundational skills that set everyone else up for success. In the world of soft skills, there's lots of things to talk about, but these are really just like the bedrock. It's 7 skills. It's about having a positive attitude, having good attendance, right? You've got to show up, having good appearance, not just in what you wear, but more and more importantly, about your electronic communication, whether or not that's email, text messages, social media. You have to have ambition to do more than just the bare minimum to get by. You have to have acceptance of your boss, of the rules of different people. You have to have appreciation of the people you work with and for, and you have to have the accountability to do what you say you're going to do. As you may have noticed, we alliterated them all with the letter A, which is why, as a way to help people remember, we tell them to bring their A game every single day.
Very nice. Very nice. So how did you get started with the Center for Work Ethic? Obviously, you picked up a lot of stuff and you recognized a lot of this, and then you found some like-minded people.
Yeah. So it started as I left the private sector and came in here. There was a friend and colleague of mine named Eric Chester, and he had written a book called Bring Your A Game to Work. And it had a lot of these concepts in it. And what we did was work with him to really put together, beyond just a book, how do you help inculcate these? How do you help teach these skills, right? Because it seems like it's just like common sense, right? Maybe you had it beaten into you as a child, but is it possible that we could develop these skills later? And so we developed a whole curriculum around it. And it really is one of those things where when you put things in front of people and you help them understand not only the what, but the why behind it, you find people can do amazing things and they can really develop these skills that go through. So we've been working with organizations. We've got more than 750 now across the United States. Some of those are workforce boards in local communities, but we also work with middle schools, high schools, technical colleges, community colleges, four-year institutions, adult education, where they're helping people get their high school equivalency or GED, helping immigrants who are learning language. We work with correctional facilities, helping people reintroduce themselves into the sort of regular population. We work with military folks, getting in the civilian world. And we have a whole curriculum to help them teach and learn what these skills are all about. Because what we found is the number one problem for folks is they don't know what they don't know. And that really holds a lot of people back.
There are two things out of that for me. First of all, there is really no sector, no job, no company that this cannot apply to. And secondly, you talk about the buy-in, how it's about the people, yes, and it's about explaining what, but also tying it with why.
Yeah. And that's a critical piece. To the first part, John, truly, there is not one thing in this world where you can be like, you don't really need those skills, right? Even if you're just coding a computer by yourself or as part of a team, and you're like, I don't really interact with people, you still need those skills, right? You still need that accountability, the ambition, you still need those things. And that's definitely really important. But if I were to start, and for your listeners, if you want to think about what is the number one thing you could do to start this whole process, it's about that why. We call it WIIFM, not to be confused with WLPO, completely different radio stations.
Completely different. Yes.
Totally different. Now, WIIFM stands for what's in it for me. The challenge with work ethic is that we try and put our lens, we try and put our focus on other people. And the reality is that people don't do things for our reasons. They do them for their reasons. And so what we have to do is really get that buy-in by helping people understand why it's important to them to develop these skills, not why it's important to me as your parents, your teacher, your boss, why it matters to you. And when you start to get that, that's where that buy-in happens. But it requires us to kind of shift that lens a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So obviously, the book, a great place to start to bring your A game to work. You have an entire curriculum, but if we can get just a little primer on what we as managers, owners of businesses who are working with teams every day, what are some steps that we can take to start to put these things in place?
Yeah, if I were to just, I'll throw out just a couple here because I think they're just easy things that everyone can do, but I think are really important in this process. The first involves, well, I want to get on my soapbox here. You can actually see me do it here. I'll just be honest with you. I hate the term soft skills. I hate it. People all over like soft skills. It just implies somehow that like soft skills are easy or simple and hard skills are, important and the ones you need. The reality is soft skills, I think, are called soft because we do a soft job of defining them, right? We'll tell people like, hey, John, I need you to bring a better attitude tomorrow.
Okay.
And you're like, well, exactly. Okay. And what does that mean? Like, is there like a sticker I can put on that says I have a better attitude today? Like, how do I know? And so what you need to do with these skills is stop being soft, is instead to treat them the same way you are with everything. You clearly define what the expectations are and how to deliver them. So instead of just say, John, I need you to have a better attitude. We say attitude is about bringing a positive spirit every day. Take control of the way you react. So how do I know you're not bringing a positive attitude today? Because you're letting something bad that happened this weekend make you have a bad day today on Monday. How do I know you can have a better attitude tomorrow? You can let that behind. Maybe you leave it at home, but when you're here in the office, when you're here on the factory floor, when you're here at the restaurant, I need you to have control over your emotions and leave that behind, right? That's a way that we can stop being soft. It's a great way for you as a boss, as a manager, as a parent to clearly make sure that you know what the expectations are and for whoever you're working with, for them to understand how they can deliver on it. If you do want some help and you don't want to recreate the wheel, If you go to our website at www.workethic.org, we have those definitions for the 7 skills that we've identified that bring your A game skills. So you don't have to recreate them, but you can use them if you want to, including if you don't want to have to get the whole curriculum. It's one of our gifts that we can offer to you. So I think that's a really important step in the process. There's one more that I think, and we can get to more here in this interview as we go through, but one that I think is critically important that we forget about sometimes, and that is modeling the behaviors. Mm-hmm. So often we talk about what we want, and then kids these days don't have the skills or this, that, and the other, and then they watch us. All right. And maybe we don't show up on time, or we're not back from break, or we, let someone slip that day, or it's not that important. What's really critical is that people will watch what you do more than what you say. I mean, you can see me, John. I mean, it's a simple thing, right? Just put your hand here in front of the camera for me, if you could, please. Just like this, right? Wiggle your fingers.
Yep.
All right, put one finger up.
Yep.
2 fingers up.
Yep.
Right. Make a little O.
Mm-hmm.
Show that O off to the camera because it's so awesome.
It's
right?
So awesome.
Then put the O on your chin for me. All right.
Yeah.
And then what? Oh, where'd you put your hand first?
Yeah, my cheek, because that's
your
where
cheek. Why?
Yeah, exactly, because you put it your cheek
right there. So
yeah.
Even though your brain is telling you chin, 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 your hand instinctively goes here first, and you're like, whoa, I got to do this.
Right.
Even a simple exercise like you're like, even a simple exercise like that, right, reminds us how powerful what we do is versus what we say. You can talk all you want to, but one of the things I hear from new employees, regardless of whether they're shifting industries and they're a more experienced worker or a younger worker the first time, is that they find their managers, their bosses, their supervisors are asking for all these things, but then they aren't delivering themselves. So make sure that whatever we're doing, we model those same behaviors, because that's so powerful in developing these skills as well.
So you're saying the problem isn't with kids today? Is that what I hear you saying, Josh?
I know it's difficult because much like you, I grew up in rural America. We walked uphill both ways to school in the snow in July. One of the things we do at the center is really focus on research. And there's some really interesting things that are out there. I mean, if you read articles, especially in today's your social media world with clickbait and everything, you'll find article after article talking about how this generation is privileged, narcissistic, they're entitled, they're spoiled. Just read all this stuff. Like, there's a great, I purchased a book that was the 50 things that are wrong with millennials. Like not 1, not 2, 50, right? And you start talking about kids these days. And so I started to do some research, and I found a great article that was like the problem with today's generation, right, is that they are privileged, entitled, narcissistic, self-centered. And it was an article from Life magazine in 1968. Right.
Talking in part maybe about the people who are talking about the
same people today, right? Exactly. Yeah. And there's another great quotation that talks about how you don't love luxury, have disrespect for their elders, they don't stand, all these things. And you're like, what is this, from like the 1920s? Mm-hmm. It's a quotation attributed to Socrates. Right. I mean, so we've been talking about the problem with kids for like the dawn of humankind, right? It is it's almost like it's human nature. Yeah. One of the things we did, though, is actually go in and do some research. We looked at a study. It was a meta study. So a study of studies. So it was done by the Journal of Business and Psychology, and they took 77 different studies around generations and work ethic and averaged out the scores and found that there was not a statistically significant difference in any one of the scores of baby boomers, Gen X, and millennials.
Oh my gosh, you've hurt my pride. I
know. Hey, but John, this may speak to you. You know which generation had the greatest work ethic?
Mine, clearly.
Gen X, baby. That's right. Yes. It was like 0.03. It's like a rounding error, but still, we got to be number one. We don't have
to talk about by how much, right?
No, it doesn't. But what's great, and just for your listeners out there, and again, I have lots of soapboxes, but I work with people of all ages. But one of the things we have to stop doing as well, in addition to stop being soft, is stop referring to young people as millennials. The reality is, if you do any generational work, the oldest millennials turn 43 this year. Okay, these are not kids anymore. Even the youngest millennials are, 25 or so. So if you want to talk about kids, right, 20, 18, 17, they're all part of this new generation called Generation Z. totally different, there's all sorts of generational stuff you can discover about them. And just in terms of studies, one of the things I love as we talk about studies, there was a study done because there's now enough Gen Z in the workplace that millennials who are at work have opinions about them. Do you know what the number one word is that millennials use to describe Gen Z in the workplace?
What?
Lazy.
No. No way.
The only thing that's universal is how quickly the generation that's there starts looking at the new kids and be like, oh, they're awful, right? The reality is it's not about how old you are. We work with programs, again, around the country, around the globe. One of the groups of people we work with are senior citizens, 50 and 60-year-olds. I'm sorry, if any 50 and 60-year-olds out there, that's not really senior citizens, but, the older workers who are transitioning new careers. And as they're teaching them job skills, a lot of those programs are using our curriculum to reintroduce them to these foundational workplace soft skills, the work ethic, so that they can be more successful in their new career. So it's not about how old you are. It's not about where you're from. It's truly just about developing these skills, getting that awareness, and making sure people have clear expectations.
Oh, that's great stuff. Bring Your A Game to Work is the book, right, Josh?
Right. And then the Bring Your A Game, because you can bring your A game to work, to school, to life. So we just call the curriculum Bring Your A Game. And that's a curriculum. There's one that's designed for kids in high school, one designed for adults, one for veterans. There's even an online version that's self-directed. You can do it all by yourself. Again, at the website at workethic.org, we've got all those resources, all those materials. You can sign up for free weekly work ethic tips, all sorts of different things.
Yeah, the free stuff that you mentioned earlier with the 7 A's to bring your A game, and of course, everything you want to know about Josh and the team, and including your canine team that you have there.
It's important to make sure that man's best friend is well represented in the work ethic conversation. I love to say that dogs are hardworking. Mine has been sleeping here in my office pretty much all day long. She got excited earlier when I had some food, but other than that, she may not be the best model of work ethic. But we still got to take care of them, and they provide us with a support you can't really get anywhere else.
True story. Josh, it's been great meeting you. Thanks for sharing tips today. Some really good stuff that we can take from the top down, if you will, and start to work from the bottom up on, meeting in the middle, which is where the answer always lies, right?
As much as we love to say it's one way or the other, it's always about where we come together, right, in those spots. And I think what's important for your listeners to remember is it doesn't matter if these are new employees, if these are your kids, if these are experienced, incumbent workers, you can do the same thing with all of them. And it really isn't about us versus them. It's just about setting expectations, making sure they know what's expected, what the behaviors are, and then making sure you model it. When you do that, you're just going to set yourself up for a path for success, and you're going to bring your A game every single day.
Well done. He brings his A game every time he guests somewhere. You can just tell. Center for workethic.org. Yes.
Just workethic.org.
Work ethic.
So just the blue part, John.
Yep. Workethic.org. If I can read.
Yep.
Got it. You can get it too. Josh, great meeting you. Thanks for guesting today.
Absolute pleasure. It's great to be here. Have a fantastic week and keep up the great work.
Thanks, sir. If you want to find out anything about work in North Central Illinois, you know where to go. It's nciworks.org.